Many governments in South Asia are a bit scared when you talk about sub-regional identities that could cut across the existing political boundaries that exist in South Asia. My own belief, I think, is these identities, the sub-regional identities, can actually contribute to resolving some of the problems that exist today in South Asia. Take, for example, the Punjabi identity. In fact, some of the good things that have happened in South Asia in recent years were largely when Indian government and the Pakistani government said, look, the two chief ministers of Punjab can actually engage each other, come up with new ideas in terms of how we can ensure more cooperation on the ground. It lasted for about 2-3 years. It's got suspended. But I think over the longer term, it's easier for Lahore and Amritsar to get together and do things than for Delhi and Islamabad to get beyond the existing stereotypes or ideological positions that they have. So I think the diaspora today, organized in practical sense, as Punjabis, as Bengalis, or as something else, that they can help resolve problems which seem impossible. When we talk about regional economic integration, the integration is not an abstract sense between the 8 states. It is about the 2 Punjabs actually overcoming the division and beginning to cooperate. Or it's about 2 Bengals today, Bangladesh and West Bengal, or Bangladesh and the India's northeastern states working together. That is where practically actual cooperation takes place, not between the national capitals. And I think, contrary to the fear that some of these sub-regional identities could threaten the existence of the nation states, they could actually contribute to the integration that we talk about, whether it is on the Radcliffe line that divides Punjab and the 2 Punjabs, or the Radcliffe line that divides the 2 Bengals. That it is getting these communities together and encouraging them to push the central governments to open up their borders and do things. I think that is going to be very, very important. And here, Mr. Manmohan Singh once talked about, purely metaphorically, you can't do it in physical time, having breakfast in Delhi, lunch in Lahore, and dinner in Kabul. What he meant was, and the second sentence he said was, look, this is how my forefathers lived. Because Mr. Manmohan Singh comes from a village near Peshawar. That for people in this space between Delhi and Kabul, trade, interaction was a natural thing 3 generations ago. The question is, can we reconstruct that today? And there, I think, it is not merely the state, national capitals doing it, but we need to get the sub-regions and the sub-regional communities to actually contribute to this process. That brings me to the second point. This is where now we're going to stretch the concept of regionalism, which most of us agreed in the morning was the most important phenomenon that is taking place in the world. While there are linguistic identities, sub-regional identities within South Asia, there is also what we might call trans-regional identities. That is, you can't draw a circle around South Asia and say, look, whole cultural interaction is largely limited to South Asia. If you look at the history, a large number of interactions took place, cultural, economic, political, civilizational, between different parts of South Asia and the neighboring regions. It's not difficult to imagine some of those axes of trans-regional axes that transcend South Asia today. One example, Mumbai, Karachi, Bandar Abbas, Basra, probably today Dubai. The connection of the trading communities in this Arabian Sea coast, probably one of the richest heritages of trade that they bring to the world, and that it is possible to conceive of a trans-regional situation where people from this Mumbai, Karachi, and Dubai today can bring something to the region which the region cannot do on its own. Or think of another axis, an axis between Benares, Kathmandu, Lhasa. This is where much of the Buddhist or Hindu scriptures and knowledge got moved when preachers and pilgrims moved across the subcontinent and beyond the subcontinent. Some of it we heard from Professor Tanchung this afternoon. Another axis, which the Chinese today are promoting, Kunming, Mandalay, Dhaka, Kolkata. Here again is an axis that today, when the Chinese talk about the Kunming initiative, that you can bring these neighboring regions, some parts of China, some parts of Southeast Asia, which is Burma is part of Southeast Asia, and parts of Eastern India can be connected in an economic axis today. That again is a vision that today the Chinese are offering. This way, we can imagine many different possible axes that cut across the boundaries, the physical boundaries of South Asia, and claim some of the rich cultural, civilizational links that had existed between different parts of South Asia and the neighboring regions. And to promote these, I think, is as important as promoting interaction within South Asia, because today what you're going to see, the rise of China and the rise of India, is going to bend the spaces around them. If China is going to grow, it continues to grow at 10%, India grows at 8%, you're going to have the sheer size of these two masses, economic masses, will necessarily pull the neighboring regions into this process, and therefore promoting trans-regional integration. And some of it, not all of it, has to be physically connected. Singapore has long talked about a Singapore corridor that will link Singapore and Chennai. You have today the Japanese scholars at the areas talking about building industrial corridors that connect Southeast Asia with South India. We're talking about trans-regional pipelines from Central Asia, which bringing gas from Central Asia through Afghanistan and Pakistan into India. We're talking about bringing gas or oil from the Gulf to South Asia. So the possibilities of trans-regional cooperation are important, and I think here again, the diasporas can do quite a bit in breaking down the existing resistance to integration, both within the region and beyond the region. That brings me to the last set of issues in terms of what the media can do. The media has got much criticism this morning. Media is only the messenger, bad messenger sometimes, amplifies bad news, suppresses good news most of the time, but it is not generating the events. What they cover, what they select is quite bad. But if you look at the garrulous 24/7 news channels today, in India, in Pakistan, in other parts, most of it looks pretty chauvinistic, pretty jingoistic, and largely seems a force that is opposed to integration and cooperation within the region. But this only gives you one small picture. But if you look at the regions in South Asia, if you look at the regional media, which has a stake in cooperation with the neighboring country, you get a completely different nuance. So what animates the media in Delhi, or what animates the media in Islamabad, is not the full reality. You have today those in Punjab in India who see greater prospects for economic cooperation with the Punjab across the border. You see today in the East, if you go to Bangladesh, the imagination about what are the possibilities that exist between India's Northeast and Dhaka is something very quite interesting. Therefore, if you look at breakdown and look at the regional media, the non-English speaking media, it's called the non-national media, you open up a very different window into the possibilities that exist. And some of it is going to be driven by the market. If the TRPs are important and jingoism gets you the TRPs, okay, you're going to see some people do it. But if you also see that there is market for cultural products produced in Pakistan, in India, say Punjabi plays, or the Indian films in Pakistan, you're beginning to see cross-border cooperation that takes place, which is producing a logic and dynamic of its own. So the challenge for media, I think, in the coming years, and for those of us who think we can build, prod, encourage the diasporas from these 8 countries to think beyond mere national agendas, to one of actually contributing to peace and prosperity in the region by cooperating. And that would include cooperation across borders, cooperation between the media groups which are based abroad, and therefore in many different ways, because it's a media that reproduces the cultural identity of the diasporas and keeps the link between the homeland, the new homeland, and the old homeland. And therefore, what we do with this media, how we encourage the media to break down the current resistances to regional integration and to imagine different possibilities, I think that will open a huge door. And in concluding then, the media has a role because South Asia has done well, has prospered when it was connected to itself and connected to the world. Today, in a globalizing economy, it is possible because the diaspora as a bridge can not only bring South Asia together, but also connect South Asia to the world on its immediate borders and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Raja, for underlining the point that if you put people against states, people must prevail. And people in South Asia, in terms of their cultural bondage and economic dependence or interdependence, is much too deeper and of a much longer life than the states in South Asia, which are relatively new. Thank you very much.